the life of Reilly and friends. Today we decided to take the show on the road. We're at the Massachusetts State House in Boston. We're going to be talking with Representative Jeff Roy, and we're going to learn a lot. Let's go. We're so excited to be here in Boston talking with State Rep Jeff Roy. Jeff, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Welcome to the State House.
Thank you. So you're a state representative. Can you explain what that means?
Okay. State representative is the person who is the voice of the 40,000 people who live in Franklin and Medway. There are 160 of us representatives throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and each of us represents 40,000 people, which makes up the 6.4 million people in Massachusetts. And our job is to craft the laws and the rules for all of the 6.4 million people. So each of the representatives would be the voice of their 40,000 people coming together to make laws and rules that are acceptable in society.
Okay, that's very interesting. And you've been a state representative for a long time. What kind of things have you been a part of?
Well, currently I serve as the vice chairman of the Committee on Healthcare Finance. I've also served on the Education Committee, Labor and Workforce Development, Mental Health, Substance Abuse and Recovery Committee, the Ethics Committee. I've done a lot of committee work in my years here. I also served as a member of the Judiciary Committee. My background before coming to the State House is as a trial lawyer. So the Speaker put me on that committee for my first term. So it's a lot of exposure to a lot of areas. Government does a lot of things in life that you probably take for granted, but this is how it all comes together in one complete package.
Like you said, you did a lot before becoming a state rep. What are some of the things that you did and are still doing?
Sure. In my private life, I worked as a lawyer. I was 28 years practicing in the city of Boston. Once I got elected to the State House as a state representative, I moved my office out to Franklin. I became a country lawyer, and so I still maintain a practice there, not as big as I used to be or used to have, but still do some of that work. I also served. My first public office was when I was 18 years old. I ran for office in the town of Milford, Massachusetts. At the time, we had representative government in the form of a town meeting, but you actually had to take out nomination papers and run for that seat. I did that and served 3 years in that position. I served on the Franklin School Committee for 10 years, 9 years as the chairman. I served on the Building Committee for the Horace Mann Middle School Oak Street ECDC complex, and I served on the Building Committee for the new Franklin High School, and I served on the Franklin Town Council as well.
It's a lot of stuff. Kept
me busy.
Yeah.
And so you said that you were a lawyer, and then what got you into public service?
Well, I remember it distinctly when in 2001, September 11th, and I don't know if you guys have much of a memory of September 11th in 2001, but watching those Twin Towers come down was a moving experience and got me to thinking how much I needed to get back into public service and get more engaged in my government, get more engaged in the things that were happening around me. And it was following that I first was elected to the school committee in Franklin. And as I got more involved in public service, that notion of giving back and that notion of understanding that, we have been given some great gifts by being Americans living in Franklin, that I thought I wanted to be a part of that process to make sure that these gifts were passed on to the next generation. And I'm so thrilled that the next generation is sitting here with me today, and you certainly are embracing those gifts. I'm thrilled that you're doing this great show, which I've heard and read so much about. I'm excited to actually be a part of it, so thank you for including me.
Yes, thank you for showing up and being part of this.
Sure.
Are you happy as a state rep, or do you hope to move up, or like?
I know exactly what you're driving at, so let me take a stab. I absolutely love this job as a state representative. It's as exciting as my legal work was, and as exciting as the cases that I handled. I have found that since I've gotten into this building and started doing this work, that this work is far more exciting and far more impactful, and gives you a chance to do things that you really couldn't do before. So I absolutely love being here. I would love to stay here for as long as possible, and I'm focused on remaining a state representative as long as the good people of Franklin will send me here.
So you can be elected as many times as you are? Like, there's no limit to how long you can be a state rep?
There's no law saying how long I can serve, but I would suggest to you that we do have term limits in Massachusetts, and that's called elections. And I run for election every 2 years. And so we run on the even years. So 2018 is an election year. The next election would be in 2020. So we run in the even years. And the limit on my service is when the voters of Franklin and Medway decide that they want somebody else. But I'm working hard to stay here and hope to serve as long as possible.
It's good to know. You're very good. You've been in it a long time, and so I don't expect that you'll have to stop anytime soon.
Oh, let me can you make a copy of that particular line for me so I can put that on my promo materials?
You've got a lot of props here. You've got these
Yes.
license plates. Can
Sure.
you explain
Yes.
what those are all
So,
about?
you know, we're sitting here in my office at the State House, and I try to embrace the community and the spirit and the history of Massachusetts in the office. So you'll see a lot of things hanging around up on the walls in the office. But these particular license plates are one of my favorite sets. So as you can see, this is a license plate from a vehicle in 1928. And you'll notice that there's a fish on the middle of the plate. And that was the first time in Massachusetts that they had decided to use a symbol on a license plate. You probably today, you go drive around, you see a lot of symbols on plates. Well, this is the first time they ever put a symbol on a plate. And if you, the codfish was very important to Massachusetts. The cod industry was huge when Massachusetts became a state back in the 1700s. And so they wanted to memorialize that codfish. But if you look at this particular fish, it kind of looks more like a guppy. Would you agree with me?
Yeah.
It's not a very attractive looking fish. And more importantly, that fish is swimming away from Massachusetts. And in 1928, the fishing industry suffered some great losses. And the fishermen were angry about it, and they went to the registrar of motor vehicles and they said, that fish on the license plate has destroyed our industry. You need to do something about it. And I'm happy to report that the registrar of motor vehicles listened to what they said. And here's the license plate from the very next year, 1929. And what you see is a much more attractive codfish. It looks more like a codfish. Would you agree? All right. But more importantly, where is that codfish swimming towards?
Massachusetts.
Swimming towards Massachusetts. And the fishing industry came roaring back in 1929. And, you know, you may think that this is a myth, but I'll point you to, if you go home and you Google and you type in codfish license plate, you'll see the story that appeared in the New York Times on that very dispute. And if you also look at the Mass Registry of Motor Vehicles, they have that same story on their plate. But those are the on their website, but those are the actual license plates from vehicles in 1928, 1929. Is that about when you guys were born?
I would say so.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So some other things that I hang up on the walls, and I'll share with you. So this is the House Chamber, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go by and see that while you're here in the State House today. But so many great people have spoken on the floor of that House Chamber, and this is a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. speaking in April of 1965. He delivered a speech from that rostrum in the room. And on January 9th of 1961, that's John F. Kennedy delivering his City on a Hill speech from the rostrum in the House Chamber. Now, one thing to know, I always ask people who come visit the State House who the last president was to visit the State House. And a lot of people see this picture and say, well, clearly it was John F. Kennedy. Well, you should know, John F. Kennedy visited the State House on January 9th of 1961. That was 11 days before he became the President of the United States. So he was not the President when he delivered this address. In fact, the last President to visit the State House was William Howard Taft. Do you remember when he was the President?
The 1920s.
That was Calvin Coolidge. 1908 to 1912 was William Howard Taft, and he actually had a summer home in Beverly, Massachusetts, and he had grandparents who lived out in Uxbridge, so he would come out and travel through our area at times. But so he was the last. So when you're asked that on your next trivia game, you'll get that answer right. William Howard Taft. So you noticed my Time magazine on the wall. Do you know who that is?
No.
That is Nikita Khrushchev, who was the leader of the Soviet Union, Russia, back in 1961. Why I have that particular magazine cover hanging on my wall, it happens to be from my date of birth, which is September 8, 1961. That's what was on the cover of the magazine that the day that I came into the world. And it always struck me when I looked at it and I said, that's the world that I came into, and it's my job in government to make sure that we never return to a world that's like that. That's a nuclear explosion going on, and that's a depiction of people at war with one another, and that's not what we're meant to do. And I always keep it as a reminder of the serious obligations of why we're in government. I have some more stuff here. Well, I also keep some famous people who are from Franklin, and clearly our most famous person from Franklin is Horace Mann. And actually have been able to find a baseball card with Horace Mann on it. I have a coin from the ceremony when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame of Famous Americans, and also a gold ingot, a brass ingot from one of the series. He's probably our most famous person from Franklin, and as you well know,
yeah,
he was the father of what?
Modern education.
Modern education. And did you know that Horace Mann spent his first 21 years in Franklin, Massachusetts? He was born there, and my favorite story about Horace Mann goes back actually to Benjamin Franklin. Franklin was named after Benjamin Franklin. It was the first city in America to be named after Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin, to thank the citizens, sent 116 books to Franklin that formed the nucleus for the first public library in America. That was in 1785. Horace Mann was born in 1796, and they didn't have the schools in Franklin like you have today. So you only went to a classroom about 5 to 10 weeks per year. Horace Mann was largely self-educated. So he used those 116 books that Benjamin Franklin sent to Franklin to teach himself what he needed to learn to get into Brown University in Providence. And I always tell people the intersection of those books and public education can't be understated. And it's a great story that happened in your hometown. And I also have, this is a baseball card of Eddie Grant. Probably have never heard of Eddie Grant, but Eddie Grant was the first National League baseball player to be killed in a line of duty. He was killed in World War I. He was a war hero. He was trying to save some troops that had been lost, and he ended up getting killed himself. And if you go over to Dean College and you play on Grant Field was named after Eddie Grant, who was born in Franklin. And finally, are you a hockey fan?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the Stanley Cup puck signed by Peter Laviolette, who was the coach of that Stanley Cup hockey team. He was also the coach of the Nashville Predators, who went to the Stanley Cup last year. He was born and raised in Franklin, Massachusetts. So I keep a few of those artifacts around the office, along with some of the other pieces to remind folks of some of the great things that came out of our communities.
I know that you did cycling for the PMC ride.
Yes, indeed. Do you know what the PMC is?
A bike ride.
Sure. So it's the Pan Mass Challenge, and it takes place every August, and it's 192 miles on a bicycle that starts in Sturbridge and goes all the way to Provincetown. And the goal and the object of the ride is to raise money for the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And we have been, the Pan Mass Challenge has been around for close to 40 years. I've been riding on a team from Franklin called Phil's Friends since 2003, so I'll be riding my 16th ride this August. And we actually come through Franklin at the Remington Jefferson School. That's one of the water stops along the route. So if you're around on the first Saturday in August and you want to see about 5,000 bicyclists come through your town, go down to Remington. But the nice thing is that in that one weekend, we raise $40 million to fight cancer, and it's saving lives, and that's the important.
It's impressive
Work. So.
You've also got a little nice caricature of
Yes,
you riding.
that caricature was given to me by the Providers Council, and they knew I loved to ride a bike, and they knew I loved the Pan Mass Challenge, so they included those on the caricature. Not bad.
We've done an interview with Jeff Nutting, and he also has done the Pan Mass Challenge.
Yes, indeed. We rode on the same team for probably 10 years together. And we train together, still ride together, and it's the Jeff and Jeff show. Jeff squared, I say.
Yeah, do you guys work together?
Absolutely. So, many of the issues that I work on up here at the State House are to benefit the residents of Franklin and Medway. So I work very closely with all of the town officials in Franklin and all of the town officials in Medway. I'm on the phone on a regular basis with both towns. I will appear at meetings in both towns and get an understanding of what types of things that they need to help them make their communities great places to live, work, and raise a family. The downtown reconstruction project, getting all those roads redone, was a part of a joint effort between the federal government and the state government and the town of Franklin to reconstruct downtown. We have a similar project going on right now on Route 109 in Medway, and a host of other types of projects. The town relies upon the state for Chapter 70 money. Chapter 70 money probably doesn't mean much to you, but it's
No idea what
education
it
aid.
means.
It's education aid. Believe it or not, about 50% of the budget funds for the Franklin Public School System comes from state Chapter 70 funds. So that's a big part of the education budget in Franklin. And the Franklin High School, which you are going to next year, is that?
Actually, no, I'm
No.
going to BC High.
You're going to BC High. Well, I'm a BC law grad, so welcome.
Thank you.
But Franklin High School was another one of those projects that was where the state and the local community cooperated. 1 cent of every share of the sales tax you pay goes towards school building assistance, and Franklin got about 60% of the funds to build that new high school from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So those are some areas that we work together.
This isn't exactly relevant, but what's the difference between a commonwealth and a state? Because I know Massachusetts was one of the states that petitioned to be called a commonwealth.
Well, they're all states, and there are 4 commonwealths in the United States. So they all are considered states. So it's just a difference in naming. But I think commonwealth, and the definition of the word commonwealth, really expands on why we are in government to begin with. It's been said that government is that thing that we choose to do together. And it's all of those things that we choose to do together. And we choose to do them for the good of everyone. So a commonwealth and sharing and working together is encapsulated by that title. Now, you probably weren't going to ask me, but I'm going to venture to try and name the 4 commonwealths: Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Virginia, and Commonwealth of Kentucky. So you can go home and Google that and tell me if I got that wrong, but I hope I didn't.
It's neat that they're all on the east side near the Atlantic.
Yes. This side of the Mississippi River.
So Jeff, thank you for talking to us, and this is actually the first part of a 2-part episode, and we'll see you next episode. So
Excellent.
Thank you again for talking to us.
Great
And
to
for
see
you
you.
viewers at home, thanks for tuning in to The Life of Reilly.
And friends.
If you have any opinions, comments, suggestions, ideas, and if you want to be in the next episode, send me an email at reillyandfranklin@gmail.com. Until next time.
Bye.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.